Outer Orange.
Привет! I recently placed 10th place with my team and I at BSF Rosemont, and while we didn't make it to top 8, I still want to at least talk about a deck profile today and show you guys pretty much what deck I took, why I made my choices. I was gonna make this profile anyway because I just like making deck profiles, but why not kind of make it with a little bit of that extra testing, you know, a little extra sweating spree added on top of it. So welcome to Ava. I've never actually done a deck profile on Ava because I was actually testing it for so long because I thought I was gonna compete with it from the very start, and I never really found my happy place with it. Just didn't make a deck profile on it. The other thing is I was having a really hard time winning with this deck, so if I'm having a hard time winning with it, I'm not having so much fun with it, then I'm probably not going to make a deck profile on it. But in the last recent weeks or so, I have been actually enjoying the deck. So here I am with the deck profile. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. So we're going to start with the ride line and we'll go through the other stuff. But before that, we want to talk about sleeves, of course. A good friend of mine got me these other Yu-Gi-Oh sleeves actually, and I could not tell you the exact name. I always forget it, but they look something like this. They're actually really freaking cool. I love red black type of art with the gray type of style to it. It's one of my favorite in terms of art structure, so I was really into these. And then for the regular deck sleeves, we got Pacifica sleeves actually, just because I wanted to match with red and I just thought it would be funny. It would also make people think I'm playing probably with TC or something, but I thought the combination with the red was just really cool. And then for deck box, I'm actually using the Dank Ritual deck box. It's this one right here. I used this one for day 1 and then I used the blue one for day 2. Sort of what it looks like here. I've shown it before. I made a whole video on it. One of my favorite deck boxes still to this day. It's so soft, and just something about it. It's just really great. My mom recently saw this deck box and she was like, "Oh my god, what is that?" She loved it so much. So yeah, definitely a classic here. But anyway, let's go ahead and start with the ride line. So for the ride line, we have the Ava ride line. It took me a while to realize why you want strictly the Ava ride line, because technically speaking, you actually could run the Archetype ride line. But because some stuff is restricted to specifically Glitter or Ava, you actually prefer this one, especially the Obscurades. So you actually want to run this, and you need the 0 because when you ride into this, you have to have the 0 starter. But anyway, basically the ride line is pretty simple. You go from the 0 to the 1, you grab a research order. You go from the 1 to the 2, you grab a research order, and then that's basically it. And then when you ride the 3, you just ride the 3. So basically you want to grab research order with these and just get what you need. Yes, the Archive ride line does the exact same thing, but the reason why you want to run specifically this ride line is actually something I didn't know until recently, is because of this card. This card actually is an insanely strong card, and even stronger if you keep reading all the effects on it. But it says this unit gets intercept and plus 10k shield on rearguard or guard circle. It's restricted to Ava or Glitter effects. So because, and by the way, this can happen at any given point. So as long as you have an Ava card as your Vanguard, you can actually keep using this effect. So just a little fun fact. You can guard with these early, so because of that alone, you definitely want this one over the other one. And let's talk about our grade 3 here real quick. So here we have Ava, and her effect says you can care about look at the top card of your deck. The top card number of cards in your deck as number of research orders in your research order zone. So usually it'd be 3, and then it'll go up from there. And you pretty much pick a card and put the other 2 at the bottom. And then she gets 5k, which is really big. The 5k is super important. And then when she attacks, you can counterblast Soul Blast, search your deck for up to 1 upgrade in its card name, call it to rearguard circle, and if you search your deck, you shuffle. You can call it from hand. So essentially, that is the condition based off how it's written. You can do that. So this is very powerful. All our effects are really good. Honestly, this is just an insanely good card, and it enables multi-attack. Get extra power on her. Magic numbers matters. That her being ATK base is already really huge, especially with the amount of deck thinning and crit pressure this deck applies. So overall, just a really good card. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the orders first, because the orders are just kind of important. They kind of carry the whole deck. So this is the grade 3 order that we have here. This is The World is a Blue Research Lab. This is pretty much the card that pretty much set this deck over from being just like a tier 2-ish deck. And that includes, you know, still running this. I think this is the card that kind of made this whole deck function crazily well, because it enables early on crit pressure. But basically the card says when it's put in the order zone, you can top 5 into anything and call it, essentially. So anything from top 5 you can call. You can call only 1 card and then you shuffle your deck. That's pretty much the skill. She has a secondary skills too. It says you can Soul Blast rest 3. 3 orders pretty much in your orders. 3 orders in your order zone like this, and then you can basically give something 5k. That is a glitter unit, so you can give 5k to Ava, or you can give 5k to Obscurade. It's actually very useful, so you can put more pressure on your Vanguard, you can put more pressure on your rearguards, and usually Obscurades are always going to be 23, so making them 28 is actually a magic number. Both really good effects. Actually, the Soul Blast effect I actually kind of like a lot more, probably more than other people do. I think the Soul Blast effect is actually insane, but sometimes it's hard to utilize depending on the soul that you have. But anyway, so the first effect is amazing because if you call an Obscurade any of the upgrades there, on place abilities do activate, so you get the crit or you get to board wipe, front row wipe, sorry. Either way, it's really good, but this is just insane. It's definitely the carry. It deck thins, it does a lot of stuff. This is like an insanely good card. Of course, along with the insanely good card, we also have the grade 1 here. So this is the grade 1 research order, the promo that pretty much made the deck viable essentially, but this one's also really insane. So you can play it with the, if you have a glitter or Ava effect. So again, another thing to realize is you can't play this if you have the art card ride line, which I actually didn't really realize until just now, but again, you need the the Ava ride line. But anyway, so order zone, all your rear guards with upgrade in them cannot be retired by your opponent's card effects, so you can actually call grade 2s out early and they can't be retired by effects. That's really cool. And then order zone, if you have 4 or more research orders, you can put this into soul counter charge, take a upgrade from the drop, pretty much add to hand. It's really awesome. So essentially just adding shield to your hand while also having an attacker, while also setting up for Ava's plays in case you run out of the ones in deck. You can always grab from the ones in drop. So pretty much these 2 orders just carry this deck insanely hard. You can argue that you can run the grade 2 version, the grade 2 research order. I'm not gonna lie, it's never worth it. Anytime you're playing the grade 2 order, it just doesn't feel as good. Yes, you can find something, but it's not worth the pop off. You would rather just play this, or you'd rather play one of these to set up. You never want to play the grade 2 order. The draw discard is not that good either. The pop is like okay, and if you're playing the grade 2 order, you definitely want to be playing this. And the only other option is you can play 9, so you can have like another slot, but again, you can only play 1 order a turn right now. That'll change in the future, by the way, but right now with only 1 order a turn, there's literally no reason to pick the grade 2 order over this. Like, you definitely want to see this. Like I said, the only thing you can do is play 9 of them. So if you happen to not see this and you see the grade 2, then you can play it. But even then, if it's like a big feels bad, you're pretty much like slowing yourself down for no reason. So I think the 8 regular orders is definitely the play. Going outside of the orders, we do have the grade 3s. So we have Persona. You need Persona. Persona really carries this deck, because this deck does have a hard time killing sometimes. It can go through for the long game really well, but sometimes it just can't kill that fast. So it usually goes into the long game. And because of that, you need Persona to keep applying pressure, because it makes everything pretty much a magic number, makes everything very obnoxious and hits over, makes the upgrades 33 or 38 if you use this card effect or anything else to travel the board. So definitely makes the deck a lot more lethal. And without Persona, this deck starts kind of falling off actually really fast. I run 1 Bent Robust. This card has saved me so many games. I used to not like this card. Actually, I used to be a big Combine Rusher fan, and then I found out that this card is just everything Combine Rusher is, but better. I don't really believe in the turn 2 rush as much as I used to, especially after I went to be at BSF Georgia, and I tried playing the grade 2 rush with Archite, and while I had some success, I also had some downsides of mainly my opponent healing out all 5 of their heals. Yes, all 5 of them. So because of that, I'm still down on trying to rush people down really fast, and this card is definitely a turn 3 card, obviously, but you can easily find it off of this and then just instantly go into an extra deck thin. It's basically a deck thin. Attacks for really good numbers. It's a 23k on its own all the time. I don't know, this card's great. This card's great. I don't want it at more than 1, but I think just finding it is really good. And with Ava's ability of being able to look at top whatever and find some cards, you'll usually find him. One of those work really well in Ava, which is another thing I really like about the deck. It kind of has like a toolbox engine to it, and it's just really beautiful. Next, we of course have the upgrades. This is the deck. This is the card that applies pressure while also giving you shield. It's a very weird and awesome combination. Basically, when it attacks, it gets 10k if you have 3 orders in your zone instead of 5k. And then on top of that, it gains a crit if it's placed. And then it also has 10k shield on top of it. It can intercept on top of that, so it not being able to be retired on top of the intercept makes it pretty much 2 extra cards in your hand on the 2 extra cards that are basically in your hand on the board when you are like in a situation where your turn's already over and you have something like this. This is basically a 20k shield in your hand, which is always really awesome. It's always how I looked at them. I'm always like, oh, they're just like 2 cards in my hand, but they're on the board instead. Normally people can't touch them, so on a rare occasion sometimes people can. For the most part, they're untouchable, especially into decks that try to retire them. They just can't be touched. But just an amazing card. Always a 23k beat stick, 28 under the order effect, and then 33 or 38 under any other effects, and there's also boosts. Just your big carry card. You can have 2 of these on the board pretty much if you hit early, or if you high roll early, then you can just attack for 2 damage. It's pretty great. Very fantastic stuff. So just overall good cards. That we're done with the 3s. I'm going to the 2s now. I have a bunch of weird stuff. So the 2s actually I don't have that many 2s. I lied. I thought I had 4 2s. So we're going to start with the Obscurade grade 2. So this is definitely like a meta call card. What I mean is you want to go into these, yeah, depending on the deck you see. So something you guys may or may not know about OverDress. OverDress is really big into knowing your matchup. It is like one of the biggest things I could probably give advice in terms of how to play OverDress. You really need to know the deck you're facing. It could actually screw you really fast if you... The only time you don't really care about the deck you're facing is decks like Overlord. I feel like you could play Overlord and face any deck you want and not care because you're going to be doing the same thing over and over again. You might care about maybe attacking your rear guard, but for the most part, you really don't care. But most other decks do care, and most other decks have certain tools like this deck where you kind of need to know when to go into what. So this is definitely a meta call card. If you feel you need to board wipe, then you have to go into this card, and it does help a lot, and it can win you games. So this is basically what this is. If you guys don't know what it does, if your order zone has pretty much 3 research orders, it gets plus 5k power, plus 5k shield. It is continuous, so he is at 15k on both your and your opponent's side. And then the other effect says is when he's placed by through an ability, he can attack the front row, which can make a difference, especially to mirror matches. If you play it out well, you'll usually be on the higher end. If you know how to utilize these two really well, you'll be in a really good spot. It is not always wise to go into the crit guy. It is sometimes smart to go into him. And yeah, that's basically him. And then the other card that I run that I do get a lot of questions about, every time I show this card, the person always picks it up. Every time I show it in one of my photos that I've, like, if I topped out locals or whatever, people always look at this card, but it's actually... Oh, where did he go? There he is. It is Enlightenment Age Dragon. So a lot of people ask me why I run this card. This could be Combine Rusher, this could be another Wavy Loss, could be like another grade 1. It could be a lot of things. Why am I running this card? Well, I know it's persona restricted, because it says it right there in the very beginning. But basically, I'll just read you the card and I'll explain as I go. So if you persona this turn, you can still pass this card a card. This unit gets 5k, and then you can choose an order zone. You can choose an order card from your drop and add to hand, and then you can choose another order card from drop and add to hand. So essentially, you're adding 2 different orders to hand. Whoop-de-doo. I know it's a surprise, but which 2 would you possibly want to add to hand? It's going to be obviously these 2. So you might be asking yourself, well, you're almost never going to be in a situation where you're going to have the grade 3 and drop. That is correct. You are almost never going to have the situation to add the grade 3 and drop, except when you have too many orders in hand and you have to discard them early on. You will come into situations where your hand gets cluttered with orders early on. It's not something you're intentionally doing. It just kind of happens. You just happen to draw into them on top of the ones you're searching, and your hand gets cluttered with them. And you don't want to toss them away because you know you're going to need them. So this card goes around that mechanic, essentially. This card lets you discard them, essentially, and you're pretty much telling yourself, I'll get those later. Those will come up in the future, and trust me, it does. This deck really wants to persona ride, so you're going to be digging for these anyway. So the whole like persona restriction is not a problem at all. So you want to persona ride, so you're probably going to persona ride, which means you're going to activate this ability. This card has saved me so many games where I'm like, oh no, I don't have an order. I top 5 or top 4, whatever with this. I find this. I already persona rode. Oh my god, here I go getting orders. The other thing is you can discard an order to then pick up the same 2 orders with them, and then what happens there is you pretty much just discard nothing to get more cards in hand to potentially use a shield. Like you can play one order to keep the other one to use as like a PG target. It's just very useful. Also the 5k is pretty nice too. You can swing with them, and then you don't care about losing him. Like you can just like call over him with one of the ops grades and you're like, okay, whatever. Like you don't feel bad about losing him because he's just dead. Otherwise he's just shield. If you feel in the matchup you don't need him, you can always just stitch him. I found this card to be extremely useful. I think the fact that I can play. I had a match where I drew to 4 of my orders and I kept pitching them, and the opponent just kept watching me pitch them, and he was straight counting how many orders were out of my deck essentially. And once actually eventually I got to 8. I got to all 8 orders were revealed, and he was thinking like, oh, she's never gonna play an order again. She's done for. And then I called this sucker down, and I brought 2 orders back to hand. And then suddenly it all made sense. Like I saw it in the man's eyes. Man was like, oh, that's why you've been pitching them. Like he was like, I think he was confused. Like, why do I keep pitching the orders? Don't I need them? Isn't it kind of part of the Ava engine? But anyway, long story short, this card does come up. I think it's great. Is it an all-time card? No, it's definitely going to be a card that will probably be the first to cut out if something changes. I value this card over Combine Rusher any day of the week. I just don't believe in Combine Rusher. This is the last grade 2 in my deck, so it's very obvious I am not running Combine Rusher. I ran Combine Rusher and I hated my deck so much. I think the camera boss is too heavy. I think the card is a bait, so I just don't run it. But hey, you do you. I understand the rush down. I think it's a jet if you want to rush down. I think the Combine Rusher comes in handy. However, I think it's a jet. It's one of those things where if you don't kill jet, if you don't heal or kill jet fast enough, it's really rough. You kind of have 2 roads to go down. You either rush jet down like crazy, like you rush them with the 2 and everything, if you mulligan for that, or you play for the grind game and try to deck them out. There really is no other win con. The other win con actually is you heal out of lethal essentially and just survive that way, because you're decked them so much. You actually have a higher chance of, you have a pretty high chance of healing, especially if you stay at higher damage throughout the game. I found the jet to be a really, really tough matchup, rather rush them down or not, because they have triple drive, and then they have multiple drives on top of that. They have a lot more of pressure, and in general they also have a pretty high chance of healing out just like I do. And I think just because of that matchup's just pretty much a coin flip. I don't think there's any good way to look at it. The other thing is the over trigger. I do think that the Breakgate OT is better than the OT that Jet has, which means that if you hit the OT, that also pretty much increases your chances of closing out the game. But I think Jet is one of the hardest matchups, if not the hardest matchup for Ava right now, and I don't think there's anything that can be done about it until the meta shifts a little bit or something changes or new cards get printed. We don't have access to the magazine promo, which I think makes it even harder to face Jet. So that's just how it is. I did a lot of testing to Jet, and I just found over time it's like if I face it, I'm just gonna have to play the best I can. I don't think there's anything I can do as a player or in terms of deck building that'll make it easier to make that matchup easier or worse. I think it's just how the matchup is, but that's just my personal take on it. Let's go into the grade 1s. I run to Bobomine. I originally didn't really like Bobomine. Actually, I kept cutting him out for other stuff, and then over time I found that people tend to swing into rear guards, and I just got tired of that, so I just run it. Also, the soul's really nice, and counter charge can be useful, but to be honest, most of the time I'll usually have open CB, so this is kind of one of those slots where I never really know what to put here. It's fine. I mean, Bobomine is good. You can run other stuff in here too. This could honestly even be Comet Rusher if you want, but it really just comes down to you. I think that card would probably be cut in the future. Next, I run the Fencers. This is Lady Fencer of the Quantum Regression. So this is a newer card. It came out pretty recently. X says if your Orzo has 2 or more cards, this unit gets plus 5k. It is on your and your opponent's turn, so both sides. So this is a 13k beater on turn 2. That's really extremely important. So you can call it to the front row, swing with it, and then swing with Van with like maybe like a Bowmine in the back, or you can swing Bowmine and then have this in the back and then have Ava here. For early pressure, you can go 8, and then this will be 23. So this card is pretty ginormous. A lot of times people try to swing into it, and I'm like, it's a 13k, and I usually tell people because a lot of people will read it, and I'll literally just say, hey, it's a 13k, and then they still forget, and they try to swing into it, and they swing under. So just a really funny card. You can grade 2 game with this card into like Jet if you need to. I only run it at 1. I used to run it at 2. But then I upped a different card for it instead of for this, just because the other card does a similar thing, but just a little less. And yeah, that's basically what this card is. It's really good. It's pretty much the alien girl, the one that gets plus 2k for every order. She scales for a late game better, but this card scales earlier, and it's an 18k base. Sorry, 8k base, which means you can rush early with this. So what I cut out 1 copy for was actually Wavy Loss. This was one of my teammates' suggestions. Pretty much like, hey, just run 2 of these instead. You can still buy 2, draw a card, and then it's a 13k beater if you have 3 in your order zone. So early on, it doesn't have to get the effect, but later on it does. Basically, the draw is actually really important. That's the only reason I run it. I just want to see it for the draw. And that's basically it. After that, it's just a beat stick. I think the draw is super OP. And then last but not least, perfect guards. Yeah, they're just perfect guards. You will find them off of Ava's effect pretty easily. These become extremely in handy, especially, you know, getting access to this against Jet. Whatever it is, perfect guards are just OP, so definitely want to run 4. And yes, I got the super bling one. I just tossed this into any deck that I'll be primarily playing. Can't resist the bling. Let's go over triggers. Obviously, you want the over trigger. Very powerful, especially in Ava. I think this card is like super nuts in Ava. It pretty much just shuts down games, though I have had a game where someone survived through my OT, but they still died. But they just survived. So if you have 3 PGs, it's, you know, it's survivable essentially, but it can be a little rough depending on how you guard. So that's the over trigger, double power, double crit. Woo! Next, I run 2 of these guys. I don't understand why people run 4. I think the 5k is too important. You never use this. I saw one person used this card. It was an Ava mirror match, and they called this guy down and they swung with it to get the soul, and I thought it was so not worth it. I saw that, I was like, you just dropped 15k shield, my guy, and then guess what? He died because he dropped the 15k shield. It was so not worth it. I never, especially in Ava, I don't think it's worth dropping this card down. I mean, if you're in dire situations, I guess. I have yet to use this. This has just been straight guard. That's actually why I run 2. I'm just running 2 because I have exactly 2 SPs, and I want to have the full ride line, the triggers SP'd out just for no reason, just because I like the art of this guy. I am not running him for the effect at all. He can be effective. There could be no text right there. There basically is no text. It's just there for the bling. And then I run 2 copies of just the regular 5ks. Again, I think 5ks are just super important. I have yet to be in a situation where these don't come up. As strange as it sounds, there's been definitely times where I have to drop like 1 trigger for death, and that 5k will matter. It matters a lot. It's mattered before, and it'll keep mattering. Next, of course, we run the other vanillas because, you know, just to kind of keep matching with the triggers. So 8 triggers total. And then I run draws. Now, I will say, in the very last minute, I changed this from fronts to draws. I was running fronts for the last 4 months, and I finally changed it to draws. I just found that if I'm going to see Jet, I'm going to lose. and the fronts just weren't doing enough. I don't know why, I don't know how, but they weren't doing enough. But the draws do matter. Sometimes my hand is just absolute crap and the draws come up and I just need them. Kind of sucks because I actually really like the 20k shield on the fronts, which is the main reason I was running them outside of just, you know, like trying to rush my opponent down. But I found the fronts to just not be as versatile as I wanted them to be. I changed them to draws and I found that my deck was functioning better. I do think they're very interchangeable. I think both are very close in terms of what you want to accomplish. As I said, I have been running fronts for a while and I think the fronts work really well too, but I did change it to draws, and yeah, I like the draws. I think draws can change from a winning to a losing situation really fast, especially in D. You can be like, oh, I have no hand, and then suddenly you're drawn to like the perfect thing, and or you're drawn to a perfect guard, which has happened. I remember a game where I hit a defensive draw and I drew into a perfect guard and I was like, whew, well, we're surviving now. Like, I just straight up survived and I killed them next turn, so it was great. So sometimes those draws, they come in super clutch. And then last but not least, we have the heals. I do run one of the crit heal into the mirror, which did come up, by the way. I was able to actually utilize it. The 25k shield goes crazy, so it's actually just really nice. And yeah, this is like a hit or miss. Sometimes you want, sometimes you don't. Keep in mind, Jet is the best deck, so if you want to run the pull 4 of regular ones, I definitely think that's probably the better route. I expected to see both pretty equally, and because I expected to see both pretty equally, I kept the crit one in. Also, in case I see weird stuff, there's a higher chance of seeing the crit pressure stuff over the other stuff. So a good example is PBO, Zorga, so on and so forth. Pretty much anything that gains crits, Barrow Magnus. If I expect to see the weird matchup, there was a higher likelihood I'll see this go off, and then, you know, the one that does with the restating stuff, because I don't think those decks are as potent right now, aside from like Maelstrom and Flagberg. But that's basically it. So that's those, and I think that's pretty much it. I'm not doing a mulligan or anything. This is just a straight deck profile of the deck that I took. Most people know how this deck works. There isn't anything in here that's like super unknown. This deck is extremely popular right now, and it's one of those decks where it's like, if you don't know what this deck does, then you haven't been playing overdress type of thing, because everyone has been playing this deck, especially over here on the English side, because it's the second best deck in the format. Basically, the top 3 is pretty much, in my eyes, like, you know, like Jet, Ava, and some parts, and then the third slot's like whatever. It could be a Youthberg, like anything else. So I think all those decks are viable too. But this is just consistent, and consistency just goes crazy. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope it helps you. If you're building Ava in general, if you want to build it, I think now is like a good time to build it, but I think it's starting to fall off a little bit. So if you want to drop the money on it, I don't know if now is the best time to do it. I think about 2-3 months back was definitely the time to start dropping money on it. But if you have a couple Springfests left and you don't know what deck to take, this is definitely a really good contender. That's with that, I'll see you guys in a future video, and thank you to everybody that I faced. I had a really nice time in day 1 at Springfest, Rosemont, also Georgia as well. Faced some really amazing people. These super fun. Jet kind of sucks sometimes, but you know, it's fun. But anyway, bye bye guys. Bye bye. Peace. Bye bye now.